Well, one of the most fun things to do when it starts to snow is to go outside and build a snowman. But I don't know about you, but in my family it often happens that we get the snowman all built, then get ready to add the accessories and find we don't have anything suitable. So he has to wind up wearing a baseball cap and having stones for his eyes and a stick for the nose. So let's learn how to solve that problem with 3D printing so that your snowman can always look fabulous and you can make him look however you want. So we're going to learn how to make eyes, nose, mouth, pipe, hat, buttons, and you can use the same principles to adapt, to change, to make your snowman unique. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do is open up a web browser, and then in the address bar at the top, type in tinkercad.com. Tinkercad.com. Click on enter, then you'll see Tinkercad's home screen. Here you have the option to log in if you already have an account, sign up if you need to create one. I'm going to go ahead and get logged in. And once you are logged in, you will see your Tinkercad homepage, and click here on the blue button for create and create 3D design. This will open up a brand new work plane. This will be where you can create all of your amazing projects. And up here in the top left, you'll see a name that Tinkercad has assigned your project. This is going to be something crazy, and you'll want to click on that and change it to make something that you will recognize. So I'm going to call mine Snowman Accessories. You could also just call Snowman. Okay, now let's get started. Now let's start out by creating an eye. So over on the right side, you'll see all of these shapes that I can use. I'm going to start and use this orange cylinder. So I'm going to click on it once and then click on the work plane. Now, if I click on one of the white squares that's around the cylinder, I can see the current dimensions are 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters. That's a perfect size for the eye. I'm going to leave that just like it is. But I do want to change the height because I don't want the eye to be sticking way up high. So now I'm going to click on the center square. I'm going to see it's also 20 millimeters high. So I'm going to click on that 20 and I'm going to change it to 5 so that it'll only be 5 millimeters thick. Now let's go ahead and change the color. To change the color, you can click on this orange circle and choose whatever color you want it to be. I'm going to go with traditional black, but you can make your snowman have purple eyes if you want. Now, I want to make a little cylinder sticking out of the top of the eye. That's going to make it just stick into the snow a little bit better. You could try to pack snow around this, but it's kind of nice to have something to actually just stick in the snow. So to do that, I'm going to click again on the orange cylinder. And this time I'm going to click on the top of the eye and click. Now I'm going to click on that one of those white squares that shows me the size, and it says 20. I'm going to click on one of the 20s and type in 5. Now I'm going to click on another one of the 20s and type in 5. Now I want to make it just a little bit smaller. If it gets too long, it's easy to break. So I'm going to click on the top, that center square there on the top, and change that to 10. Now I want to center that with the eye. So to do that, I'm going to click somewhere over here in space, hold down my left mouse button, drag around both objects. So when I'm holding that mouse button down, it'll allow me to drag, and that allows me to select both things at the same time. I can see up here shapes selected are 2, and that lets me know I did it correctly. I have both of those shapes chosen. Then I can click on the align tool. That looks like a long rectangle on top of a short rectangle. And the keyboard shortcut for that is L, so you could also just type in an L on the keyboard. That's going to make all these little circles pop up around. I want it to be centered, so I'm going to click on this center circle here, as well as the center circle there. Now then, I'm going to click on the group button up here. So the group button or union button looks like a square and a circle joined together. So I'm going to click on that. And now both objects will turn to be one color. If you need to change it to a different color, again, you can click on that circle and change it. Okay, so now I have an eye. I want two eyes though. So I'm going to leave that one selected and I'm going to come up here and click on duplicate, which looks like 3 squares stacked on top of one another. So I'll click on that button. It's going to look like nothing happens. It blinked really quickly. And that's because the duplicate, the copy, is right on top of the first one. So I'm just going to drag it over. So now I can see I have 2 eyes. Now we have some eyes. Now next up, let's make a nose. So over here, I'm going to find a shape. I'm going to use this purple cone. So I'll click on the purple cone one time and then click onto the work plane. Now this time, instead of using these squares, I'm going to use the information here in this little box. Okay, so the top radius, I'm going to make 4. I don't want it to be perfectly pointed at the top because that makes it very difficult to print. So I want to make it 4 millimeters across the top there. And then the radius for the bottom, I'm going to click and I'm going to leave that at 10. And the height, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it up to 22 or so. You can make yours different sizing depending on what you want. Okay, and then the sides, I'm just going to make it all the way as far as it'll go to make it a little rounder is what that does. I can change the color here, so if you can have a purple nose if you want, or you can click and I'll make mine the traditional orange nose. Now, I also notice how my eyes pointing this direction. I want my nose to point that way as well so that I can put one of those cylinders on top. That will allow me to stick it into that snow better. So I'm going to click on the nose, and then I'm going to click the mirror tool up here. That looks like 2 triangles looking at each other in a mirror. And then I'm going to click on this up and down arrow to flip it over. So now it's backwards of what it was before. And now I want to put a cylinder on top that I can use to push into the snow. So I'm going to click on the cylinder tool, place that on top of the nose, click on one of the squares, change the dimensions. Right now they're 20 by 20. I'm going to change it to 5 by 5. And then I'm going to click on the top square here and change that to be 10 so that it's the same as the eyes were. Now I want to select both of these. Remember, one option is to click over here and drag a square around them, a rectangle around them. Now this is going to be a little difficult for me because of the position so that I don't get the eyes. So instead of using that technique, I'm going to use another one. So I have this selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the nose. So holding down the Shift key on the keyboard is another way to select more than one thing at a time. So hold down the Shift key, click, and you'll have 2 shapes selected. And you can see up here to make sure that you do have both shapes selected. Now I can click on the Align tool, which is that rectangle and square lined up. And then I'm going to center and center. Now with those still both selected, I will click on the Group tool, or the Union Group tool, to join them together and make them one object. Okay, so now I have eyes and a nose. Okay, next up, let's make a mouth. So to make the mouth, I'm going to come over here and look at my shapes again, and I'm going to use the round roof shape, this turquoise light blue color. So I'll click on that and then click on that work plane to place it. Now I'm going to rotate around so that I view it from the side. So to rotate, hold down the right mouse button and then drag it around so that you can see it from the side. And then you'll see this curved arrow right here. So I'm going to click on that curved arrow. I'm going to start to turn it, and then I'm just going to stop, and then I'm going to click on that number and type in 90. Okay, and that'll flip it around the right direction. Now, rotating can be a bit challenging, so if you rotate it and it messes up, okay, and it didn't do correctly, click on the undo button and then try it again. It's really easy to rotate something and get a degree or two off, so make sure you rotate it exactly 90 degrees. Okay, once you have it rotated, you'll see that it is now below the work plane, which we don't want. So to fix that, I want to click D on the keyboard to drop it back on to that work plane. Now I'm going to resize this. So I'm going to click on one of these squares and change the width, the length across here, and make that 70. And then I'm going to change the height, this direction, to 21. So now I kind of have a mouth looking shape there. Now you can see it's way too thick, so I'm going to click on that center square so I can change the height, and click on the 20 and change that to make it 3. Now I can change the color if I want. You can use whatever color you want. I'm going to go with the traditional black color here. And now I'm going to cut it out a little bit so that it's not just like straight across, but you could leave it straight across depending on what shape you like. Okay, but I've got this selected. With that selected, I'm going to click on the duplicate tool, which is those 3 squares lined up. Again, looks like nothing happens because it just blinks, but I'm going to now click on the whole shape. And now I'm just going to click on the up arrow key on the keyboard. So if I look at the keyboard, I can just click on that up arrow key a few times until I get the shape mouth that I want. Now I'm going to select both of those pieces. So just drag around both of them or hold down the shift key, whichever you prefer. Make sure you have shape selected too, and then group them together with that square circle button. Okay, and now I have a mouth. I can kind of line it up there. Okay, I also want to put some pegs on there that allow me to put it in the snow better. So I'm going to click on that cylinder, the orange cylinder, place it on top of the mouth, change the sides, make it 5 by 5, and change the height. So that center square there, click on the center square and change that to 10. Now I can just drag that kind of into the place where it needs to be. Be sure you view it from the top though, otherwise it can be difficult to tell if it's in the right spot or not. Okay, so I have one of them. It's a good idea since my mouth is a little bit longer to make 2. So I'll click on the duplicate button, click on the right arrow key on the keyboard just to move that over. Find a good spot for it, we'll leave it there. And now I want to group those all together. So I'll click on that background, drag around all of the objects, and click on the group button. And now I have a mouth. And of course, according to the classic Frosty the Snowman song, the snowman needs a corncob pipe. So let's make a pipe for him. So we're going to start with the orange cylinder and add that to the work plane. Now we're going to make it a little bit smaller, so I'm going to click on one of those squares, white squares, change the 20s and make them 15. Okay, so click on each 20 and make it 15. And then I'm going to change the height, make it not quite so tall, so I'll click on that center square here, and instead of 20, let's make it 16. Now I want to put a hole in here, so I'm going to use this gray striped cylinder, which represents hole, and I'm going to add that to the work plane next to it. Now I want to change the size, and I want this to be a little smaller than this one so that it will actually be a hole. And so I'm going to change it and make it 11, and then click on the other 20 and make it 11 as well. And then I'm going to use this little triangle or cone shape and click on it and drag it up 2. And that raises it off the work plane. So you can see it's floating now a little bit. Okay, and now I'm also going to want to make the little stick that comes out of the pipe. So I'm going to use this red box shape. So I'll click on the red box and add that to the work plane next to these two things I already have for the pipe. I'm going to click on one of the corner squares and let's make it about 52 millimeters long. And then we'll kind of give it like let's do a 6 millimeter diameter. So click on that 20 on this side and we'll make it 6 this way. Then click on the center square at the top there and make it 6 that way. So now you have this elongated cube shape here. Now I'm going to select the outer part of the pipe. I'm going to select the inner part of the pipe. I'm going to select my cube shape. And I'm going to click on the Align tool. And then I'm going to center. And let's go ahead and center them all. We'll obviously have to move the red part in a minute. But we have them all centered now. I'm going to click anywhere to get out of that Align tool. And now I'm going to click on that red pipe, or the red stick here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on the keyboard while I press the right arrow button. And what that does is just allows it to move out about 10 at a time. Make sure that your stick is still connected to your pipe after you move it over. Now I want to select all 3 of these shapes. So I'm going to click over here and drag around both or all 3 of the objects. Now I'll see that I have 3 shapes selected. And then I'll click on the group button here. Okay, I can change the color if I wish. And now he has a corncob pipe. Now, next up, let's give him some buttons. Okay, so I'm going to start with a cylinder. We'll add that to the work plane. We'll leave it at 20 by 20, so we don't need to change it in that direction. But let's make them thin little buttons. So we'll click on that center square, change the 20 to a 3. Let's go ahead and change the color. So I'm going to make my buttons black, but again, make your buttons whatever color you want. Now I'm going to add a hole cylinder. So I'm going to put 4 little holes in the buttons so that they look like buttons. So I'll add that hole cylinder. Going to change the size on that to 3 by 3. So I'm going to click on one of the white squares, change the dimensions to 3 by 3. Now, since I want 4, I'm going to duplicate that hole. So I'll click on, make sure it's selected, and then click duplicate. Now I'm going to click the down arrow key 6 times. So on the keyboard, find the down arrow key, click 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That'll move it 6 over. Now I'm going to select both of those holes. Click duplicate. And now I'm going to click on the right arrow key 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I have a grid there of 4 holes. I'm going to select all 4 of them, group them together. Now I've got all my 4 holes selected and grouped. Now I'm going to select the button. So I held down the Shift key and clicked on the button. Now I'm going to click on the Align tool and I'm going to center align those holes with the button. Now I'm going to group them together and now I've got some holes so it looks like a button. Next up, I'm going to add a cylinder to the top so that I can push those buttons into the snow. So I'll put that orange cylinder on top of the button. Going to change the dimensions by clicking on that white square and changing that to 5 and that to 5 as well. I'm going to change the height here by clicking on that center square and change that to make it 10. Now I'm going to center those 2, so I'm selecting both of them, using the Align tool, and center and center. Now I can group those together, and now I have a button. Okay, if you want more than one button, then you can duplicate that here. You can also always duplicate it later in the slicing program if you decide you need more. Okay, so I duplicated it, moved it down, click duplicate again, and have 3 buttons. And last but not least, let's give our snowman a hat. So to make the hat, I'm going to make a traditional top hat looking hat. I'm going to use this orange cylinder, click on that and add that to the work plane. I'm going to click on one of the white squares and we're going to make the hat 100 by 100. Okay, it's in the way now, so I'm going to move it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change the color and make it black. Okay, it's too tall to be the brim, so I'm going to click on that center square and I'm going to make the brim 3 millimeters tall. So I'll click on the 20, change that to 3. This is optional, but it can help if you want to make it rounder, is to drag the sides all the way up to 128. Next up, I'm going to put a cylinder on top of the brim. So this will be like the barrel of the hat. So I'll add that to the top. And I'm going to make that 70 by 70. So click on one of the white squares, change one direction to 70, change the other direction to 70. Now I want it to be a little bit taller. So I'm going to click on that center square, click on the 20 and change that to 50. Okay, now this would be a good top hat, except that when I go to print it, when it's hollow inside, okay, it's not going to print well. So I want to make it a little bit round on top to keep it from collapsing when it goes to print this top spot. So to do that, I'm going to add a pink half sphere to the top. So over here in the shapes, I find this hot pink half sphere, click on it and put it on top of this top hat. Now I'm going to change it to 70 by 70 so it matches that barrel of the hat. And then I'm going to change the size because I really don't want it that round. I'm going to change it and make it 5. So I'm clicking on that center square, click on the 10 and change it to 5. Now I want to center these, so I'm going to click over here, select everything that's part of the hat. Click on the Align tool, and I want to click on that center this direction and center that direction. Now I'm going to click anywhere to get out of the Align tool. And I want to group the 2 objects that make up the barrel, because that's what I'm going to use to make the hole. Okay, so I'm going to click on the pink shape as well as the orange shape. Okay, so I click the pink shape, hold down the shift key, select the orange shape. Now I can see I have 2 shapes selected. And then I'm going to click on the group tool to join them together. And I don't want it to be pink, so I'm going to change it to black. Now I want to hollow out the hat so that it's not solid all the way through. That will allow it to use less filament while printing. And so I'm going to select this top piece here, the barrel. I want to duplicate it, so I'll click on the duplicate button here. Going to change that duplicate to a hole. Now I want to change the size of it, so I'm going to click on one of the white squares, change the 70 to 66, and the other 70 to 66 as well. And I want to move it down 3 millimeters. So if I click on that red shape, this black cone or triangle shape, I'm going to move it down 3. Make sure I can see it from the bottom. There it is. Okay, and now I'm ready to select all of the parts of the hat. So I clicked and dragged around all of my hat pieces. I'm going to align them using the Align tool. And I want to center and center, and finally group them all together. Okay, so now if I look at it from underneath, I can see the hat has been hollowed out. Now that I have all my pieces, I am ready to export them and get them ready to slice and send to the printer. So I'm going to decide what I want to print all together. So I'm actually going to print all the black pieces except for the hat on one plate. So I'm going to come up here where my title is and I'm going to say black. Okay, so all the black pieces except for the hat. So I'm going to click on the eye, hold down the shift key, click on the other eye, click on the mouth, click on the buttons, okay, until I have them all selected. Doesn't want to click on that last one, I'll go in a different order. Okay. And once I have all of those selected, I can come over here, find the export button, click on export, and then I'll click on STL to save that as an STL file. Now I'm going to do the same thing with all of the other pieces that I have. I'm going to change it to orange. I'll click on the piece that I want to be orange, click on export and STL. And I want to click on the, I'll call it gold, or the pipe here, and export, STL. And finally the hat, I'll just call it hat, and click on export, STL. Now I have all of those exported. Now I want to open up my slicing program. I'm using Bamboo Studio. You may be using a different slicer. The buttons may look a little bit different, but the process should be very, very similar. So I've got this open. I now want to add whichever file I want to print first. So I'm going to click on the add button here. And then I'm going to choose the Snowman Accessories Black. That'll be my mouth and buttons and all of those pieces. I can put those on there. Everything should be flat. Make sure it's all turned the right way. And now I'm going to click on Slice Plate. Okay, I can see it's going to take 7.5 grams of filament, 33 minutes to print. And now I can print that plate and select the printer where I want it to go. I don't have all of mine hooked up yet. And then send it to the printer. Okay, once you've done one plate, you can do the others the same way. Go back to prepare. Hit Control N for new. You can also go to File, New Project. And then click on Add. And then choose the next piece you want to print. Click on Open, slice it, okay, and print the plate, okay, and send it on. Do the same thing again. So New Project, Add the next piece you want to print. Okay, now it's important that you made sure your nose is shaped somewhat like mine. If you have any overhanging pieces, you may have to add supports. Okay, but this nose won't need supports, which is why I made it the way I did. Okay, and I'm going to slice that plate and then print it as well. And then finally the hat. Okay, and I'm going to add the hat. Now the reason we made it have that little round was to make it more printable, since the printer doesn't like to print over nothing. It's still going to droop down some because it is such a big gap that it's covering there. But since it's the underside of the hat, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. So I've got that. I can slice that plate and select on print and send that on its way. And now you have all the pieces of your snowman. Now you just need some snow to make it work. And of course you can follow a similar process if you want to add some additional features like arms or legs or whatever snowman might need.